All right, so let's start by chanting the pranava together, which is Om a few times. Let's take a nice deep breath in. Namaste. All right. Okay, so today we're doing a flow for the torso, muscles of the torso. Very similar to spine flow, but it does have a little bit of a different inflection to it. The props that I recommend that you have are here. Block or two, bolster, blanket, and you might want a strap as well for this one. So those are optional, and you can use like a couch pillow. I mean, everyone's got a blanket in their house. You can even use a towel. And blocks, sometimes books can, make up for that. I do recommend, though, if you do some yoga at home, it's not a bad idea to invest in these. They'll last you a lifetime. So it's not like it's not like they're going to come out with Yoga Block 2.0 or, Yoga Strap 2.0. You could use a belt instead of a strap, but, they're pretty much timeless. So investing in them is going to be a good, worthwhile investment. All right, so let's start with our torso flow. We're going to come back into a pentacle on our back. Relax. And let's just take a few moments to really come into this moment, this present moment with our awareness. The truth is we can never not be in this present moment, but we can sort of dream that we're not in it. And that's why sometimes yoga teaches that our life is like a dream, because we're having a sort of a nightmare, a waking nightmare, where we're believing our thoughts about the future and the past. We're terrified. But if we just relax and allow our awareness to come into the present moment, find there's really nothing to fear. Okay, let's begin with a banana today. So what I recommend is moving your hips over to the left, to the right side. Then we're going to take our left leg out to the left. We'll just cross our right ankle over the left ankle. And you may already begin to feel the stretch here, which is what we're looking for. But if you don't, then reach your arms up overhead. Reach up, grab your right wrist with your left hand. And then you can wiggle yourself over. Wiggle yourself over until you feel a nice stretch here and the right waist. Okay, that's sort of the hallmark that we'd like to feel in this posture. If you don't feel that, I want to hear from you. I want to know, because that means that something isn't right. And additionally, if you're in pain for some reason, I want to hear about that as well. Okay, because that means, again, something isn't quite right. Something isn't going right. Otherwise, we're going to be here for about 5 minutes. Props don't really help much in the banana pose. So you are welcome to use them if you can find a use for them. But generally speaking, they're not going to be that helpful. The only other thing that I'd like to mention about banana pose as far as the posture goes is sometimes the arms can begin to get tingly. Your fingers or your hands can get a little bit tingly. And usually what that is a nerve impingement in the shoulder. The nerve that goes into the arm is somehow getting pinched. So nerve impingement, it's not something you want to encourage in your practice. It can be dangerous if the nerve is impinged for a long period of time. So what I recommend is you find a different position for your arm. So if your arms are straight, right, you're doing what I recommended, you might try bending your arms and maybe you grab the opposite elbow. That may help, it might not. You can try lowering. On this side, it would probably be your right arm. So you could try lowering that arm. You may have to bring it all the way down. And the key is that you can put the arm in any position as long as you still feel safe and you still feel that you're getting the stretch in your right waist. Okay, so if there's no stretch in your right waist when you do that, then that's a problem. You might have to just be a little more aggressive with positioning your shoulders, or you may have to let me know what's going on, and then I may have to take a look at your pose to figure it out. Usually it's not a problem. Most people can find a compromise if their arm is bothering them. And I do want to mention that it may not just be impingement. Sometimes people have injuries and, it aggravates the injury, something like that. There might be a few different reasons why you need to lower that arm. Some people are just built that way, or their arm in that position, it just pinches, it hurts. They don't feel that tingling, but they just feel like something's being agitated or bothered in their shoulder. So that's also true of the legs. I used to have a student who I taught private yoga to on a weekly basis, and her tailbone would hurt when she would do banana pose. She had a tailbone deformity from birth, and it bothered her whole life. Not all the time, but in certain positions, and banana was one of those positions. So we experimented for a little bit, and we found that if she just reversed the cross of her legs, voila. Don't ask me why that worked. It's not important. The body is too complex for us to necessarily be able to understand always why a modification helps. It's not so important that we understand why. It's more important that we understand that it did help and that we do what's necessary. And so, again, experimentation is key when we run into a problem. It's more important than necessarily understanding why something works, just knowing that it works, okay? All right, we're getting close to the end here. You're gonna hear me ring the gong. When I do, we'll switch over to the other side, okay? Okay, so coming back through a neutral position. And we'll make our way to the other side. And again, I'll recommend that you begin by moving your hips over to the left edge of your mat, left side of your mat. Take the right leg out to the right, and let's cross the left ankle over the right ankle. Okay? And then extending our arms up overhead, we're going to reach up and grab the left wrist with the right hand. And again, that might be enough that you already feel the stretch here. But if not, you're just going to sort of wiggle yourself over until you begin to feel the stretch here in the left waist. Okay, and again, we always check in and make sure that it feels safe. Nothing is dangerous, feels dangerous about what we're doing. And we feel an effective stretch in our left side. As always, if you've got some music that you enjoy listening to while you do yin, you could put that on. As long as your microphone is muted, then it won't be a problem. Okay? I'm not going to be playing any music because that creates problems with copyright and things like that. All right, we're going to be here for 5 more minutes. Again, if there's any problem, send me a note in the chat. And if I don't respond, just unmute yourself and get my attention. Let's come back to neutral and we will rebound for just a few moments. Good. Let's bring our legs in, give them a little squeeze. Shake it off, a little bit of movement. Let me see what is next. All right, so we're going to hinge up to seated. So we take our hands under the hips, palms down. We send our legs straight up. Okay. Now, if there's any pain in your back, you just bend your knees until that pain goes away. Otherwise, the legs straight. Lift the head and neck up. Take a nice deep breath. Exhale, lower the legs toward the ground just before they touch. Pause. Inhale, pop the legs up. And let the legs pull you up to seated. Okay, so now we'd like to target the back of the torso. And we start with a butterfly pose. Joining the feet together, feet out away from us, and relaxing the upper body forward and down like so. Okay, and letting the back round. Now again, a couple weeks ago we did the spine series, same idea. We don't pull the heels in like this. That's a groin stretch, not a spine stretch. Okay, feet out. We also don't need to pull. We'll get plenty of stretch just by relaxing into it. Now, props. Could use a block under your forehead to support the forehead, like so. So if your head feels heavy, that's one thing to try. 2 blocks for the forearms, like so. Again, if it's a little too intense, you might try that. Another option, another thing worth trying, if it's a little too much, is bolster, right? Laying on the bolster like that. You can put a block here. Do one of these, all right? If your knees are in the air and your legs feel sensitive, 2 blocks under the knees to support them, okay? If it's not quite intense enough, try sitting on a block or a folded blanket. That'll push you forward a little more aggressively. Like this. Now, the exact position of your feet, again, is going to depend on you. I find that if my feet are too close in, it's a groin stretch. If they're too far out, I begin to feel a stretch in my hip again. All right. So again, there'll likely be a sweet spot, a range where you feel a combination safe and comfortable, but also an effective stretch. Okay. And that's going to be different for everybody. And again, if you're having a hard time finding that, be sure to let me know. Just 30 seconds or so left here in this first posture of this set. Very often when I create a set, it's 2 postures, but sometimes it's more. It's usually not less than that. All right, let's come up and then we'll go right into our next posture. And again, we'll rest after this set. So legs extend out in front of us for a caterpillar. Okay, same idea. I come forward and down. The intention is stretching backside of the torso. Okay, now again, I can use the props in a few different ways. Like this. Again, under the forearms, like so. Bolster, almost exactly the same, right, as the last posture. Now again, I always like to emphasize when I talk about props in a yin class is it's not restorative yoga. We're not that concerned with how comfortable we are, okay, or even how relaxed we are. I mean, we want to surrender to gravity, surrender to the posture, which isn't necessarily the same thing as feeling relaxed. Feeling relaxed doesn't mean we aren't relaxed. So this is a very interesting topic of discussion in spirituality because you could say that all of spirituality is really about letting go on a very deep, fundamental level. So what is letting go but relaxing, right? In a sense. But we often misinterpret letting go or relaxing with feeling relaxed. If you are in a scary situation and you let go of control, you let go of trying to defend yourself, you will probably not feel very relaxed. You'll probably feel very scared, right? Doesn't mean you haven't let go. So this is a very common misunderstanding with spirituality. We often think that we need to feel relaxed in order to let go. We need to feel safe in order to let go, or we need to feel like we're in control before we can let go. This hasn't been my experience, and this isn't what my teachers teach me. So I'm not encouraging you to do anything stupid. I'm not encouraging you to ignore what you're feeling or to do something that you think might be injurious. But at the same time, letting go, relaxing, doesn't mean that we will immediately feel relaxed or we will feel safe or we will feel even, right? In fact, we might even feel like things are getting worse. But my experience is that this, if we really letting go on a deep level, then in a sense, we begin to float downstream. And I'm using that as a sort of a metaphor. We can think of the ego as that part of us that wants to swim upstream. And it thinks that unless we swim upstream, we're not going to get what we need to be safe or happy or fulfilled. Then at some point, either because life brings us to a certain point, or maybe we work with a spiritual teacher, whatever it is, we have a spontaneous realization. We can let go. And if we really let go, then we begin to be carried downstream. And all streams eventually lead to the ocean. And you could say that everything ultimately, all the water comes ultimately from the ocean, that it just evaporates, it's carried in the clouds, and then it rains in the mountains, and then the mountain streams wash down back to the ocean. So if you really understand this concept, and in yoga, this is sometimes expressed as Ishvari Pranidhana in the Yoga Sutras, surrendering to a higher power, surrendering to, you could say, God, or to your true nature, whatever it is, then this will carry us. We don't have to defend, we don't have to fight anymore. Now, this is a pretty advanced and deep concept. So if you're confused by it, or you're, upset by the idea that somehow letting go is going to, bring you something, then don't worry about it. It's not worth getting upset or bent out of shape about. All right, let's go ahead and relax on our back. And we'll feel that rebound. Okay, and the best way to do that is stillness and silence. And the rebound is a type of surrender. Once again, you're going to find that theme throughout my teaching, because it's a very important theme in my experience. There are parts of us that absolutely are terrified of letting go of control, of surrendering, of trusting, of having any kind of faith in anything other than our own control, our own intellect, our own knowledge, our own power. So it's understandable, and this is what our culture teaches us as well. It doesn't really teach us to believe that there is anything other than that. But this is very much what spirituality is about, is teaching us to begin to access this potential that we have as human beings, to access something deeper within ourselves and within our experience as human beings. All right, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. I'm just going to shake out that discomfort, a little bit of movement. This is called the leg cradle. Just sort of release the tensions that might be there in our back, wherever we find them. And then let's go ahead and hinge. And we'll come on up to seated. Okay, so now we're going to target our sides once again. You may want a strap for this, and again, a belt stands in perfectly for the strap. So you may not have this other stuff, anything close to this other stuff at home. Blocks might be kind of weird. You don't have anything shaped like that. But most people will have a belt, right? Now, I like to sit on something for this posture. Your mileage might vary. I'm going to leave that up to you. I usually sit on a blanket. We'll take the legs wide. And what we'll do is turn toward the left leg. And we're just going to fold over and hold the foot. Or grab a strap and hold the strap with both hands. So like that. Now I'm not pulling. My arms are relaxed. I'm just sort of holding myself in place. And what I want to feel is a stretch right here. Okay. So if I'm here like this, I feel it, then I'm done. If I don't, then I'll try and stack or roll my right shoulder over my left shoulder. I might also feel a stretch here, and that's perfectly fine. It's a good stretch. But today our focus is, let's really focus in on stretching here. Now, a common experience is as you hold the posture, you might find that the sensations dissipate, that they go away, and that they're not as intense a few minutes in. And that's a natural thing to experience, and it's actually a good sign. So that isn't anything that you need to be worried about. You don't need to chase after the stretch. You don't need to try and do more or crank yourself further into it or pull yourself down. Now, if you want to, I'm not going to say that that's wrong or bad or dangerous, because I don't believe that that's true either. But it's certainly not necessary. I once heard about someone who took a yin class with someone, and the yin teacher would say, chase the stretch, chase the stretch. That's not necessary. I'm not sure where they learned that or heard that, but in my training, I've never heard that that's a necessary thing to do. So get the stretch when you come into it. Doesn't need to be super intense. So it can be quite mild. My teacher, Paul Grilly, he liked to say, 70, 80% is plenty for yin. An edge very often is a zone. And in yin, that zone can be fairly broad. I think in vinyasa, sometimes maybe it's a little more narrow. We also have less time in vinyasa to feel our edge. We're only there for a few seconds, right? 30 seconds is a long time in a vinyasa class. So in yin, if we come to an edge, it doesn't need to be super intense. We're feeling something, and we hold there, and we find 2 or 3 minutes in, sensation's gone, then that's fine. We can just relax there. If you want to go a little deeper, totally fine. Additionally, if maybe you've come to an edge at the beginning, and a few minutes in, you find it's too much, right? Maybe it's just gotten more and more intense. Sometimes if you wait, that intensity also dissipates, but it may not. And you might get to the point where that quality of safety is no longer met. Right? When I teach, I always say you need to feel safe, you need to feel the stretch. So maybe you're feeling the stretch, but at a certain point, maybe a couple minutes in, you're like, well, I don't know if I feel safe anymore. And so you can back out of it. Okay. So even though we'd like to try and cultivate stillness and surrender, like most things in life, that's sort of a lofty ideal. And we might find that in reality, there may be times when that's an ideal that we're not going to achieve for that day, and that we need to modify something or change something. And that's perfectly fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch sides. So again, we're in our lateral dragonfly, half dragonfly, whatever you want to call it. And we're coming over the right leg this time. Again, if I feel a stretch here already, I don't need to do anything fancy. I can just stay here. But if I don't, then I need to, again, take myself far enough that I do begin to feel my edge. I find my edge.
And then once you've found your edge, you can just stay there. I think I know most everyone in the class today. But I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the breath for anyone who might be newer to Yin. So the breathing in Yin is generally done in a natural way, which means you aren't trying to breathe deeply or slowly or anything like that. You're not trying to manipulate your breath in any way. And the reason for this is there's a yin and a yang to everything. So this is called Yin Yoga. And yin and yang are complementary opposites. And a great way of thinking about yin and yang is you can't have one without the other. So you can up without a down. You can't have male without female. You need some kind of a contrast. If there were only daytime, there wouldn't be a word for daytime because there wouldn't be anything to compare it to. We only have day because we have night, and vice versa. If it were always dark, then we wouldn't have a word for darkness or nighttime. It would just be the way things are, right? So, yin and yang are complementary opposites, and they just describe that condition that everything for us in life is basically broken up into these conceptual opposites. And the opposites really only exist in our mind. In reality, these two things aren't really separate or opposite, but in our mind, they tend to appear that way. So yin qualities are surrender, darkness, downward, earthiness, lacking rhythm, lacking repetition. The Taoists saw this as sort of feminine qualities. Yang qualities are upward, active, draws attention to itself, is kind of flashy, surface, on the surface rather than the depths, right? Yin is depth is a yin quality. Having rhythm, repetition, movement, these are yang qualities. Now, and again, the Taoists associate that with a masculine energy. The yogis usually reverse that. They tend to associate the yin with Shiva, who is a man, and they associate the yang with the analogy they give is like a woman who's dancing, and she's very seductive, and the man is drawn to that. Okay, so again, it's important not to. We live in an age where it's almost like the genders are at war, and people get offended with, oh, that's not a feminine quality. Like, don't worry about it. Different cultures have different conceptions of what's masculine, what's feminine. We're not going to worry about that. They're just using these as a way of kind of teaching us about these energies. All right, let's go ahead and rebound. So we're going to relax, come onto our back. And let's just take a few moments to feel the sensations that are there. So to continue with the breath, if I try and control my breath, if I try and deepen my breath, if I try and elongate my breath, expand my breath, these are all yang qualities. And these are things that I teach in vinyasa class, which is a very yang kind of class. And there's a place for yang in our practices. Okay? Again, it's not one is better than the other, or one should win or anything like that. We really want our practices to have a balance of both. But this is Yin Yoga. And so in Yin Yoga, the tendency is to not try and control the breath. At most, you might want to be aware of your breath, but you don't need to manipulate it or control it or slow it down or do anything like that. All right, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. Shake it out. And then we will go ahead and hinge on up, seated. Okay, we have one more set left. And for today's sequence, I chose a set of postures that are not that common in Yin Yoga, but I chose them for a very specific reason. So this first one is the supported fish. So we have our blocks, right? Or hopefully you have something like that, because they are pretty essential to do this posture. And you could maybe use a pillow, a small pillow or something like that. What you'd like is to have a block, one here, right? You lay back, and then you might put one behind your head, and instead of a block, you could use a pillow or a blanket or something like that. Okay, so this is how we start. What we can modify it as we go, and I'll tell you how to do that. But that's where we want to start. Now, you want to check in, make sure you don't feel any pain in your back. It is a back bend. If there is pain, you can try a few things. Moving this block away from your buttocks. You could try bending the knees like that. You could try the leg position like that. Really what you do with the legs is very much secondary to what we want to feel here. Okay, so bringing the arms out like a T or up like a Y. We want to feel a stretch in here. These are the pectoralis muscles. You could have the arms bent or straight. I like having them straight and in a Y position. Okay. If your neck feels okay, you can get rid of this block and then you come into this position. All right? But if there's too much strain on your neck, you're going to put the block back in position.
Got about 3 minutes left.
Okay, so just gradually making your way out of that pose. Now, again, we aren't going to take a long rest yet because we have one more posture in this set. So make your way onto your back. I know that your back might feel sensitive, mine does, but again, we'll address that in a moment. We want to have one block handy. We bend our knees, place our feet on the ground about hip distance, and then we press into our feet and we'll lift our hips up and then take the block and place that underneath our pelvis. Now there are 3 different heights for the block, so you want to pick the one that's appropriate for your body. Okay, usually I do the high position. Okay, then we want to make sure our back is happy. And then you can begin to straighten out your legs a little bit or a lot. And you can begin to bring your arms overhead. And what you want to feel is a stretch right here. You might feel it in your hips as well, hip flexors. That's a very good stretch. But again, it's a torso flow. So we are trying to stretch right here at the front of the abdomen, what's called the rectus abdominis. Now you can play around with sort of tilting the pelvis forward slightly or back. Your legs can be wider or closer together. Those are, again, our small details. I do recommend the arms overhead. It does seem to help. But again, if your arms hurt in that position, then you modify it if necessary. Okay, and we want to feel that, again, our back is not being asked to do anything that would compromise its health over the
long term. Generally speaking, back bends are very good for your health. Okay. But depending on what's going on with us, we can potentially hurt our back if we're not careful. So, need to be mindful. Otherwise, again, we're here for our 5 minutes, and we've got about 4 minutes left.
Now, in about a minute, you're going to hear the gong. And at that point, you want to very gradually make your way back onto your back. And if possible, you want to wait to counter stretch. So just sort of splay out and relax. Again, I haven't ring the gong yet, so I'm just getting you ready. And as you do that, you might feel a lot of sensation. All right. And again, we very often are scared and try and control when we feel a lot of sensation. So I want you to notice if there is that impulse like, oh my God, I need to do something. It's very natural to feel that. It's very common, but again, it really can be helpful for us to learn how to not necessarily do anything when we feel that way, to see if we can just relax in the midst of a feel, oh my God, I need to do something about this. Okay, so just take your time. There's no rush. Just gradually, slowly coming down, back onto the back. Close the eyes. You don't have to straighten your legs right away. Okay, but maybe after a few moments, you can straighten them out, coming into what we call pentacle, just relaxed on your back. Just allowing yourself to really feel everything that you're feeling. All right, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze, a little shake out, a little movement. And then let's go ahead and set up for Yoga Nidra. So this is a guided relaxation. It's done laying down on your back. I recommend a bolster under your knees. Again, some kind of a firm pillow. You can, even fold up a pillow from your bed or stack a few pillows if necessary. Again, unfortunately, we're not using the microphone. The sound is much better with the mic I bought, but I don't know why. This is how technology is. It works great 1 minute, and then the next minute it's not working at all. Who knows the reason why? You do everything the same, and just randomly it decides to not work. So this sound will have to do for today. Hopefully it's a nice quiet environment on your end. If you were playing some music during the yin, now's a good time to shut it off. The only reason you might want to keep some music on is if there's some background noise that it's masking. So if there's some construction on the street or something else that's very distracting, you might have a little bit of music on. But otherwise, the more silent, the better. If it's just a quiet room with the sound of my voice, that's really the ideal for this. If you're at all cold, I recommend you cover yourself with a blanket. If you have an eye pillow, you might put that over your eyes. You definitely want your eyes closed. And you might want to shut off any lights that are on. So laying down, making yourself very comfortable. We'll just do a very brief Yoga Nidra today. Let's take a nice deep breath in, filling the lungs. And we'll exhale with a sigh. And again, let's inhale very deeply and exhale with a deep sigh. And then just let your breath be completely natural. Go ahead and set the intention to allow your body to remain still. And to remain alert and awake throughout the practice. Begin to bring attention down to your toes. Now to the ankles. The knees. The pelvis. Chest. Shoulders. Throat. Chin. face, your head, the back of your head, the two shoulder blades, your back, the buttocks, calves, heels, and the soles of both feet. Now the entire body. From the top of your head down to the tips of your toes. The whole body. All right, returning awareness to your breathing. Let's gradually begin to deepen our breath. Beginning to move and stretch as you wake yourself up. And when you sense you're ready, gradually making your way up to seated. All right, so I'd like to finish off with a little bit of mantra or chanting. Again, I won't be able to hear you, but hopefully you can hear me. The words are Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. May all beings, wherever they are, be happy and free from suffering. Okay. And again, I'm not sure what the situation is on your end, but hopefully it's nice and quiet and you can sing without disrupting anybody. Okay? And you're welcome to sing along if you'd like. Loka Samhasta Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samhasta Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samhasta Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Namaste. So thank you all for sharing your practice this evening. I hope you got a lot from it. If you'd like to do some different practices with me that I've recorded, check out my Patreon page. I've got a lot of practices that I've posted there. They're all free. So you're welcome to do them. Longer yoga nidras, breathing techniques, pranayams, yang yoga. There's some other yin classes on there. So feel free to check that out. If you have any questions, you can contact me on my website, mahapathayoga.com, or on Facebook or the Patreon page as well. I'll be back next week with a different sequence. If you're available a little earlier, come to the vinyasa class that I teach before this one at 4:45. Okay. Thanks again for coming. I hope you got a lot from it. And hopefully I'll see you next week. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks, Deborah. Thanks, AK.